Hello. Today we're going to introduce talking about traffic stops. And it's kind of hard to cover that in the classroom environment, mainly just because um, you there's so many different ways that it can go. It's not the same. Um, it's not like every everything goes the same way every time. It's kind of a unique experience, you know, every time. Now, there are patterns that emerge, and it is possible for officers, unfortunately, to get complacent and think of them as routine and things like that, especially if there's kind of a spell of, where everything kind of goes as expected. But like any other real police interaction, you never know when it's going to turn sideways, when it's going to go south, when it's going to you know, hit the fan, as it were. And so, with respect to traffic stops, um, I, I I guess I want to start out by talking about this is maybe the smoothest possible path that a traffic stop can take. And that, in my experience, is how probably 80% of the traffic stops are going to go smooth, regardless of what you stop them for or whatever. But then you have the ones that present challenges. And within those ones that present challenges, then you also have the ones that just go to hell, in a handbasket and like really go south. And the best thing that we can do as law enforcement officers is try to spot patterns, try to spot threat patterns and things like that that help us to recognize when we need to kind of ratchet up our alertness level and, call for backup, maybe proceed instead of the normal approach, maybe doing like a felony stop where we're calling them out of the vehicle instead of approaching, that kind of stuff. Um, because it is a dangerous activity, and the danger isn't always just with the person that you're stopping. You're also on the side of the road with traffic going by, and so there's accidents that happen with respect to that. And officers get hit, officers get struck, officers get killed, not by getting shot at by the uh, person that they stopped, but by getting creamed by a passing vehicle that isn't paying attention or that is drunk themselves or something like that. And so the way that a traffic stop tends to go when it goes smoothly is that you will observe some violation and you stop the vehicle because of that violation. Sometimes, technically, all you have to stop a vehicle is reasonable suspicion, the same as you would to stop a pedestrian on the street, right? And so if you have like if I'm working an investigation and I have a person of interest that I need to talk to and I see them out driving around, I could stop them for that purpose, to say, hey, can you come into the office and have a chat? You know, you know, and if they say yes, then we go back to the office. And if they say no, I don't want to talk to you unless I'm under arrest, then I can decide, hey, do I want to arrest them or do I want to, let them go? But it could be something other than a traffic violation, technically. Or if I see them driving and I know that, hey, that guy's got a warrant, and I stop them, confirm that it is him, and I can arrest him for the warrant. But a lot of times it is, we see them committing a traffic violation. So they're speeding, they're, you know, doing an improper lane change, they're, weaving in their lane. We think they might be drunk or something like that. And we stop them. And so when we stop them, we will introduce ourselves, we'll say who we are, we'll ask for their driver's license, their proof of insurance, sometimes registration documents. Um, like if we stop them for expired tags or something like that, or if the plates don't belong on the vehicle, we'll ask for it. And then we will check. Usually at that point, we'll go back to the vehicle to check them for their driving status, their wants and warrants, things like that. And then we'll reapproach. And so when it, in the smoothest of scenarios is we stop them, let's say for speeding, we approach, we get their documents, they're fully compliant. We check their driving status. They've got nothing, we check their, look and see they haven't had any tickets. They haven't, nothing is up. And then we decide, hey, we're going to give them a warning or we're going to give them a ticket or whatever we're going to do. We do that thing. We revisit the vehicle there. We give them back their driver's license and whatever documents they provided. Then we give them whatever citations we're going to give them and explain what they need to do. Like, hey, there's instructions on there. There's an envelope if you want to send the money or whatever. There's a website, what have you. If we don't give them a ticket and we just say, hey, I'm not going to write you any tickets today, but you need to drive slower, you need to drive better. Next time you probably won't get a courtesy, and then we tell them that they're free to leave and we proceed on. Sometimes, and this still counts as going smoothly, is we stop them and we discover that they have a warrant for their arrest or something like that. That's not the reason we stop them, but we stop them for an improper lane change or something. We find out they've got a warrant. Well, sorry, you got to go to jail because you got a warrant. I had nothing to do with it, but here we are. And then we hook them up. They're fully voluntarily, submit. We put them in handcuffs, stick them in the car, and take them to jail. And that still counts as a smooth thing. And then we go on about our day, they go on about their day. But we also have scenarios where it doesn't go smoothly. Even if it doesn't go completely off the reservation, um, people will present challenges to us, and to I think that any officer that's out there doing traffic stops has to prepare themselves for how they're going to respond and how they're going to deal with that because it can be frustrating at times. And it can be difficult to avoid some of the pitfalls that creates for us. So I'll give an example, and that is, let's just say the bad attitude. The driver that just has a bad attitude for one reason or another. They either hate cops or they're just having a bad day or they're some combination of those things or something. But some once in a while you will stop a car and that person is just the biggest jerk that they can possibly be to you. Don't you have anything better to do? And F you and all this other kind of stuff. And but they give you what you ask for, like, you say, I want your driver's license or whatever, but they're just kind of a jerk about it. And um so you have to be prepared and understand that is something that will happen, that people sometimes people are just having a really bad day and you're the icing on the cake, getting pulled over and possibly getting a ticket, or maybe they assume they're going to get a ticket, especially because a lot of what cops look for when they're deciding, if it's a borderline kind of thing, is they'll look and see if you gotten other tickets, and if you have, and you're still out there driving like a moron, then your odds of getting warnings go down quite a bit. If you're regularly getting tickets. You know, if you haven't been stopped for a long time, you haven't got tickets in a long time, then the odds that maybe you might get away with a warning, some of it depends on how much over you're going. It also goes, that way too, is if you're only going 8 miles an hour over, 9 miles an hour over, or whatever, your odds of getting a warning are better than if you're going 15 or 20 or plus, you know. And so what I'm saying is that somebody who's just being kind of a jerk about it, but yet they are complying with the instructions. They're complying with orders. They're saying doing what you're telling them to do, but they're just, you know, mean and hateful and hostile for no real apparent reason other than just that you're inconveniencing them, you're making them late for whatever that they were speeding to get to, or that you're probably going to give them a ticket and they can't afford a ticket or something like that. Um, and so when you encounter that, there is a natural human tendency to want to do the tit for tat thing. So they're a jerk to you and you act like a jerk back to them. You have to find a way to avoid that because we are expected to behave in certain ways, especially in this day and age with the body cams. Because if anybody files a complaint about our professionalism, the first thing that our supervisors are going to do is check the body cam because every interaction is supposed to be on body cam now. And so when I do a traffic stop, I have to activate the body camera, and then there's a vehicle camera as well. Um, and so they'll check that. And if I'm a jerk, even if they're a jerk to me, if I'm a jerk back, I'll at least get talked to about it. If not, actually in trouble. It kind of depends on, because, everything like that is kind of a spectrum, you know, if I'm a little bit rude or one word slips out that shouldn't have, like a cuss word or something like that, as long as I'm not like directing it at them or something like that, it it's something you can weather. But if I am just, you know, a complete jerk back, responding, maybe even more so than them, or if I'm the one that was first rude and then that drove them up and escalated their behavior, then I can get in trouble. But we have to be prepared to deal with people that are having bad attitudes because that is probably one of the more frequent things we have. And um, strictly speaking, we really shouldn't let it influence what we do. But it's easier said than done, to be kind and courteous to somebody who's going out of their way to be the opposite of that to you. Um, it's difficult. So, um, what I tend to do, or how I tend to do it for myself anyway, is to recognize, you know, like, hey, this guy's being a jerk. Why is this guy being a jerk? And I'm like, he must be having a bad day, and so I try just to kind of ignore it to the best that I can, and I don't have to have a comeback to everything that he says or whatever. Don't you have anything better to do? I don't have to respond to that. I'm just, you know, I need your driver's license, okay? You know, right? Just redirect it back to what is my purpose? What is my lawful objective? What am I here for? What stage are we at right now? Right? So if I say, hey, I'm Deputy Papper with the sheriff's office, reason I stopped you is you were going, 12 over the speed limit, and I need your driver's license, proof of insurance. And then they're like, don't you have anything better to do? Whatever, like, yada, yada. And I'm like, I need your driver's license. Can you give me your driver's license and proof of insurance, please? And just keep it professional. I don't have to answer questions that aren't meant to really be answered, you know, like it has nothing to do with anything for him to ask the question of whether I have something better to do. Clearly, I don't think so, or I would be doing that other thing that would be better for me to do. Right? Now, if I pull them over or whatever, and I just say, "Hey, give me your driver's license," and they say, "Hey, what do you stop me for?" I think that's a I think that's a relevant question. I'll answer it if I did, but I'd make a habit of already saying it. But still, I can do that. But then if he wants to bicker about that, if I say the reason I stopped you is for your speed, and I wasn't speeding, and it's like, I still need your driver's license and proof of insurance, please. And if they continue to bicker, I'd be like, you can make whatever arguments you want to, later date, later time in court, or if you don't get a ticket, you can make your complaints to my supervisor, you know, you can make complaints to the sheriff's office at any time, after the stop. But I need your driver's license and proof of insurance. So that's how I tend to handle uh, rude and belligerent people is that I will answer relevant questions that haven't been answered before. But if they keep if they either keep asking the same question I've already answered 15 times, or whatever, or they're just saying stupid stuff like, you know, commenting about how big of a jerk that I am, or, that I have nothing better to do, or that you know, get some kind of satisfaction out of ruining their day or something like that. I don't have to respond to every statement that they make. So that helps me somewhat, It's just, what do I need? So if it's at that stage, then I need their driver's license and proof of insurance. If it's at the end, whenever I come back and I'm explaining the ticket to them or whatever, and they want to be a stupid jerk about it, you know, then I'll be like, all right, I have to explain it. I have to say the words. You can listen or not listen. You can, do whatever you want, and then I'll give you this thing, and then we can be on your way. And so now that I've explained it to you, do you have any questions for me? And, here you go. You know, you are free to go, kind of thing. Um, I try not to end with "have a nice day" if I just gave them a ticket because I've done something to cause them, grief. So I'll just say, you're free to go, or, slow down, that kind of stuff. So that being said, I think I'm going to post another video regarding the challenges, because I can sit here and just talk about it here, but I think it carries more resonance whenever you see it in action. How the variety of different ways that people will challenge law enforcement beyond just being rude, but where they're not complying with specific things that I need in order to process my traffic stop, right? I can't write them a ticket if they don't identify themselves. I can't, um, and so, there's different things that sometimes people do that kind of force us to escalate something way beyond what it ever should have been. They will turn that, misdemeanor, speeding ticket into a felony arrest, because they force our hands. And so, but I think I've got some videos that kind of go along with that I can discuss, and I think it'll resonate a little better. I just don't want this video to get to be like, an hour long or something like that. So I'll just do it in another video. So stay tuned.